So, the topic of the next 14 minutes and 45 seconds is whether or not entrepreneurship can be taught, and we know that. So before, how can we be innovative in teaching innovation, right? So this is kind of on the background of what I would like to discuss. But maybe first of all, why don't we go one by one, real quick, presenting a little bit of the experience from the university that you represent in the field of entrepreneurship. So let's start from Tom on this side. Oh, okay. Okay, Robert.
Okay, well, I guess I want to start. First of all, thank you very much for staying this late and still listening to us. And, it's just wonderful to see all the people here. We have taken, at Santa Clara, we teach entrepreneurship in several ways. Fundamentally, there's an academic track, and then there's a practical track. There's something called the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We work very, very hard to understand two things, and I'll be very brief, that there is no sense in making a supply of entrepreneurs without a demand for them. You have to be in an industry space, in an economic space, and a national space that is accommodative of people starting companies. Otherwise, it just, you're launching young people out to do things that may not be successful. The second thing we try to pay attention to is to teach an entrepreneurial career. You're going to be the best entrepreneur if you know something about the business you're in, the customers you have, the suppliers you have to deal with, the issues of managing people. So we urge people to start in a small company, small entrepreneur company, learn the business that they're going to get involved in, learn how to manage people and the troubles. Then let's go out and start companies, and we'll help you do that. So we look at these supply and demand and stage of the person in their personal development as they're taught to be entrepreneurs.
Should I? Okay, let me say something about Europe as compared to the US, not to start with, given that we have been talking all the day about comparisons. And actually, latest rankings published by the FT, the Financial Times, or Top MBA, put at least 3 business schools among the top 10 in the field of entrepreneurship. This includes London Business School, INSEAD, and mine. So we are very happy for this. This didn't happen only 7 years ago. And my guess is that in years to come, we will see more European business schools among the top 10, and probably Chinese, as has happened in many other sectors, in other industries. At the same time, we also experience an increase in the number of international students coming to Europe. Whereas, unfortunately, and you know this well because GMAC reported this data very recently, there has been a drop of 35% of international students to the US for different reasons that we can all suspect. So what we anticipate in Europe is actually a flourish, a renaissance of the entrepreneurship spirit, and that many different business schools and universities will probably focus on different areas. Then, if I turn into one of the distinctive advantages here in the US as regards education, what I miss in Europe is probably an approach to the liberal arts curriculum that we missed sometime in the 19th century. If you compare both systems, here, as you know, the college dedicates lots of emphasis and importance to the humanities. Whereas in Europe, even after the Bologna process, most universities specialize from the very first year. So which region produces more entrepreneurs, the US or Europe? Maybe we should, bring back the liberal arts curriculum, the humanities, because the more you teach the arts, literature, sociology, the more entrepreneurs you produce.
Oh my goodness, I wish we could just talk about that. And show that famous graphic that Steve Jobs showed when he launched the iPad, which technology and liberal arts, that street sign saying Apple lives at that intersection. Because that is, in the world of entrepreneurship education, this debate about integrating liberal arts with technology education is a hot topic. I wish we could do that. So I am pleased to be here. Thank you, Marco. With a couple of good friends. I'm a professor of engineering at Stanford University, so we have a couple of wonderful business school professors, and I'm here representing the School of Engineering. In the last 25 years, it's been a joy to to work at Stanford, having been a recovering entrepreneur before that at Symantec and some other places. And being involved in seeing entrepreneurship education spread like wildfire. It's the question, some wise person once told me, some mentor years ago, it's not a question of whether you can teach entrepreneurship, it's whether you can learn it. And of course, it's proven now. For those of you in the room who are over 40, like myself, just forget what your school, your university was like when you were there in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship education. It has absolutely changed 180 degrees. And if it hasn't, you need to call your old college and say, why not? Because have them study what Santiago has done, not only at IE Business School, but also at IE University, which is undergraduate. Come anytime and see us at Stanford, and we love sharing that design can be taught. You know, we helped to develop that methodology in our D school, as well as in my lab. We, hired Steve Blank 10 years ago, and the next thing you know, we've got the lean startup methods. But along the lines, we've also graduated dozens of PhD students who are now teaching around the world, including Robert at Santa Clara. And the two people, it's fun, the two people leading the INSEAD Business School's efforts in entrepreneurship. So it's just radically changed it, and it's a no-brainer. You know, the woman, last thing, the woman that was up here before, that was talking, well, the one before, from Poland, saying 200,000 engineers are being graduated a year in Poland. That's fantastic. I just hope that they're also getting access to lots of offerings and opportunities to learn innovation and entrepreneurship, because then they'll be supercharged engineers. And we've got total evidence on that. And that's why it doesn't matter whether it's Europe or US, this still matters.
Right. I will start back from you, Tom, because, the role of Stanford, there would be no Silicon Valley as is without Stanford. So Stanford must have done something good, right, in the role of building bridges with entrepreneurs, that's for sure. So that goes for granted. What should Stanford do that is still not doing to go, to be a major player in the next wave that you just mentioned?
Well, Robert's a recent grad, so help me on this one. But I'll just take the bait and talk about, and I'd like it for you to build on it, Santiago. We got this, the number one major at Stanford University right now, guess what it is? It's computer science. It didn't used to be that way. And you'd be surprised, those of us in engineering are really worried about that. We're actually worried about that because we want to be and remain a liberal arts university. We really do, because being successful, not only starting and growing an enterprise, but also running it with principle, running it with a value system, in other words, a culture that's going to survive, is based in what you learned in your liberal arts and humanities courses. It's just no-brainer. So that we're pretty nervous at Stanford right now that this tilt toward, oh my gosh, I got to go major in engineering or computer science so I can get a job and my parents will be happy. We're pretty nervous about that.
If I may just, because Stanford, of course, is the benchmark, I would say, and of course, Tom, who has taught at IE, he knows us very well. But if I may talk about how we see universities from different perspectives, you actually belong to the School of Engineering, and sometimes business schools are seen as very detached from engaging with the rest of the universities. You know that they were created originally on the other side of the Charles River. That was the case of Harvard Business School. Very detached from the rest of the colleges. So maybe if business schools can actually improve some way, is probably trying to overcome this silo syndrome that has been criticized in many ways, both at traditional universities, but also at some other innovative. We are now creating, for example, a university fully fledged from an independent business school. And what we are trying is actually to avoid this silo syndrome, which is prevailing at many large universities. So this would be, something where I guess we all have to improve. At a previous panel was also mentioned the need of being in very close contact with reality. we need to, again, overcome the ivory tower syndrome. Academics and researchers need to be very closely connected to reality. So the transference of our research and knowledge into actual products and services has to be something very tangible.
Let me take it from there, and then we keep going. A quick note about IE institution in general, university and business school, that I'm pretty fortunate to be pretty close to, is a very entrepreneurial institution. So I think you live by doing that eventually, the lean startup methodology out of also the educational system. So I want to go on some specific examples that have been somehow the norm in the last few years of what universities are specifically doing. And let me start from IE, and then we keep the circle. And I want quick answers here if it's possible. Startup accelerators, do they work or not at universities?
They do. We are actually launching now an accelerator and incubator for edtechs. We realize that being an innovative educational institution, we can actually host both startups and scale-ups, which are focused on the educational industry. And again, at a previous panel, it was mentioned that education will become one of the fast-growing industries in the future. So there's lots of opportunities here. And I really believe that technology can transform the whole learning process. So all entrepreneurs of the world, please mobilize yourselves and come to academia, because there's lots of opportunities for improvement here.
Robert.
Well, there's several things to say. Accelerators, do they work or not? The evidence.
Accelerators, sorry, within universities.
Within universities.
So StartX,
Right.
Era 31.
Right. The evidence is mixed, and we have to be frank about it. It depends on what an accelerator does. Are you teaching someone to build a technology, or are you teaching someone to identify a market and exploit it? Startups, accelerators in universities tend to have success rates as low as 0.1% will get to an exit of an M&A or an IPO. To some, have upwards of 60%. And it depends, there's that huge variation of results, and it depends on what they do. It turns out that the ones that teach accessing a market, finding an exploitable commercial enterprise do very well. Those that focus on doing building a prototype tend to do very poorly. And so it's, when we say accelerator, we're making a very big statement about lots of different activities. And I want you to think about this very carefully in another way. The hallmark of entrepreneurship is doing something different and doing something new. Why would you send them to school to tell them how to do it all the same way? So you have to think about, what are we generating, what are we teaching, and above all, be very careful what we do, because the one thing that we're worried about, and I've generated companies from my own entrepreneurship class, 4 companies that have received VC funding and gone on. We do it largely by telling them the problems they'll face and the trouble they'll face and how to overcome difficulties. So it's really important not that we just say, let's have accelerators. It's important that we say what's in those accelerators, what are they doing, what are the objectives, and how do we measure success? Is it starts or exits of successful exits?
Robert said it best.
I know, that's why we invited him.
Nothing to add to that.
Yeah, thanks.
So let's add to that, though.
He was my teacher, so.
So must be learning from
Well
somebody.
said.
Seed funds. Seed funds are connected to the alumni network, the university per se, officially, unofficially. Do they work? I mean, that's something that started a few years ago, and I see more and more. What is your take, Tom?
Yeah, well, I don't know of one at Stanford.
Yeah, there's
because we're just sitting next to half the venture capital in the United States, within driving distance. So,
to a certain extent, StartX is tapping into that community.
although they don't take equity.
Right.
They don't take
Right,
And they emphasize education, which is one of the reasons I do admire StartX, which actually StartX actually started one of my undergraduate classes about 8 years ago. So I'm proud of that, of course, but I'm really proud that they've figured out a model that emphasizes education. Because, let's face it, the probabilities of those members of StartX or any of those accelerators becoming, surviving is low. But the people those human beings will survive to go on and do something different. So if they've learned something along the way, like Robert's talking about, great.
Last question, I'm going to go real quick. And this is kind of a disconnected from the main topic, but more connected to a couple of panels ago. Cryptocurrencies. And entrepreneurship. I mean, if somebody has to teach that, it should be universities or maybe not. Who starts? Come on, I know you're very opinionated about that.
Cryptocurrencies are fascinating. Cryptocurrencies are not currencies, they're assets. And it's like a painting. And if you want to buy a painting and you think you can sell it for more, great. It may go up or down in value, who knows? Well, it's an entrepreneurship thing for sure, but it is one of the things that we need to be most aware of when we teach entrepreneurship. What are you trying to do as an entrepreneur? Are you trying to create a commercial opportunity? Are you trying to create wealth for you and others? Are you trying to create a lifestyle? Or are you trying to do something flashy? All those things are entrepreneurship. We need to understand what it is we're doing.
Actually, the key question here, I guess, is whether our schools allow for applicants to pay with cryptocurrency. Do they? Not yet at my school.
That'll be interesting.
But what about yours? No, actually, we are, of course, we deliver courses on cryptocurrency, and we really believe that blockchain is going to become a basic scheme for academia in many different aspects, not to track the evolution of students and applicants, of faculty, of research, so many different things. So I guess we need to bring in all those innovations into the learning process.
It's there to stay. Tom, last word. Can be yes or no? Well, let's go get a drink.
Let's go get a drink.
All right, I agree with that. So, esteemed professors, much appreciated. We'd love to have you a little bit more often. All right.